A YouTube video exposing systemic fraud in Minnesota has gone insanely viral, and it's taken the internet by storm, mainly on X, because this has become the de facto platform of free speech and interaction outside of the mainstream media. And so I want to dive into this today because this is a massive story. This is huge. I think a lot of people have known stuff like this was happening. Same with EBT fraud that came to light during the shutdown earlier this fall. I think a lot of people knew different types of fraud were happening. I think what's really disconcerting for a lot of people here in the United States is that this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? Like, yes, you have people doing illegal activities to commit fraud, opening up fraudulent businesses, claiming false things. But in order for them to actually get paid, you have to have a government bureaucrat, a program administrator on the inside who is rubber stamping and green lighting all of this stuff. So what's exposed in this video is the fraud that you and I, the public, are seeing. What's not exposed, but what's implied, is that there is an entire government apparatus now likely being controlled by at least one political party that is enabling all of this, and it's part of a much bigger problem. So I want to dive into the video. If you haven't seen it, it's Nick Shirley's expose on fraud that is happening within the Somali community within the state of Minnesota. There have already been widespread allegations of fraud. Feeding Our Future is a great example. This was a food program that was supposed to be providing school lunches to kids during COVID, because a lot of kids, especially in poor income areas or low income areas, they only get fed, or the only meal they get per day sometimes is through the school lunch program. And that's typically a federally subsidized program. And so when the schools closed during COVID, kids didn't have access to food. And so a lot of nonprofits stepped up to help make sure kids got fed. And so Feeding Our Future was an example of it. They have since been found to have been a fraudulent enterprise. They weren't actually handing out any meals to kids, but they were still billing the government for it. The founder was charged. A 44-year-old white woman from Minnesota was charged, as well as I think up to 78 now. Co-conspirators have also been charged with acts of fraud. Unsurprisingly, they are all their names are all Somali in origin. So this seems to be a pretty systemic problem. So that had already come to light, and now what Nick Shirley did is he, along with a local retiree who's been looking at this data, collecting data on fraud happening in Minnesota, specifically within the Somali community for a while, they went to a bunch of facilities in Minnesota, literally knocked on doors and did a self-audit. They audited in real time these facilities and found that a lot of them are not providing the services they claim to be providing. These facilities include daycare centers. They included autism centers, which, I don't know, that, like, side note, that's really weird to me. My brother's autistic, so I've grown up in that space and I'm well aware of like the resources that are provided. And just the idea of a standalone autism center is really strange to me. A lot of times those programs are embedded into existing local services, the school system, for example. It's weird to have a standalone autism center. That's just very bizarre. So those were part of the fraud, as well as home healthcare service providers and other organizations providing related healthcare services. Not covered in his piece, but other people have also reported medical transportation businesses are also part of the fraud. So you have folks who are registering vehicles, providing transportation, typically to Medicare recipients, folks who are older who need to go to doctor's appointments, and claiming reimbursement from state-funded programs that are also funded by the federal government, but not actually providing any transportation to those individuals. So they went to a bunch of these different facilities, knocked on doors, and were like, hey, can you explain this fraud? Or in some cases, he made up his fictitious son, Joey, and said, hey, I want information about how to enroll my son, Joey, into your programs, into your daycare center. A lot of these places had blacked out windows, locked doors, vacant parking lots. They went during the week. There have been some criticism from folks on the left, like, oh, of course they're not going to find anything. Like they went during Christmas. No, he started teasing out that this video was coming back in mid-December. So I suspect he probably filmed it in the beginning of the month. So well before the Christmas holiday. So there should have been, like during normal business hours where you would expect to find children at daycare facilities, there were none. A lot of these facilities were in industrial parks. So areas not really conducive to where you would expect to find children running around. They didn't have like playgrounds or anything, like nothing you would typically find of a daycare center. And so the ones he went to, many were locked. Others, they just turned him away. Like the people who answered the door answered in broken English, told him that his son Joey was not welcome there, obviously racially profiling him because Nick Shirley is white and these people are not. And the Somali community is a very insular community, but it's very clear like something is going on here. So this video has gone massively viral. At this point, it's gotten 126 million views on X. I believe it's only gotten like 1 million or so views on YouTube. So clearly, it's gone insanely viral on X. There has been a lot of follow-up action as a result of this. The FBI has taken action. Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security was doing raids. As of my knowledge, as of yesterday, going to facilities to actually check on what's going on. So I want to walk through what the conversation on X is right now. So I think this is what where everything's being talked about. It's not being talked about in the mainstream media, and there's been some important reactions to this. I think are important to consider, especially as we head into a major midterm election year, and really as people are starting to get fed up. Starting is the wrong word. People are fed up. People are getting to the point where they are done. They are checking out of the system, and they want change, and they want change now. And if they don't get change, I think something is going to happen in 2026. So I'm not going to watch the full video. It's 42 minutes long. I'll drop a link in the description. You can feel free to watch that on your own time. But I'll play some clips from it. So this is a teaser that he posted in December 23rd, so a couple days before dropping the full video. And he talked about how him and the guy who's working with found billions of dollars of fraud in Minnesota, and that these daycare centers were receiving millions of dollars in tax-exempt funding. And so that's important. This is public taxpayer-funded dollars going to these businesses to support their operations when they're not actually providing any services. So this clip, this one has gone, I would say, the most viral for Quality Learning Center. It's a daycare center that they couldn't even spell the word learning right, which I'm going to just side note on that. That's pretty common in other parts of the world. I've shared in other videos. I lived in Jordan for a while, and that is super common. You'll see misspelled things in English all the time. Like, you get the point. It's not a big deal, but this is clear, like, it's just a clear case of a community of people who've come to the United States, and they have brought an aspect of their culture with them. And that is, misspelling signage, but that's not abnormal where they're from. It's very abnormal for us here in the United States. So let's dive into this first clip.
Fraud is taking place within the government and the Somali population. Here, this building alone, Quality Learning Center, is a daycare, yet they spelled learning wrong, and they said leering. This daycare alone in 2025 has received $1.9 million from the government. And the strange things about these childcare centers is there's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday. And if you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed and the windows are all blacked out. No one's working. Midday, children should be in here, and this place is licensed for 99 children, and this is the outside. There's no windows, no nothing. And like I said, they literally spelt the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota. The government is complicit with this, and this is just one of the hundreds of child daycare centers here inside of Minneapolis being ran by the Somali population. It's sad that it's happening here in Minnesota, and it stinks that it's happening and it's being labeled on the Somali population. However, that's just the facts of what's happening here inside of Minnesota. $1.9 million for this daycare center that can't even spell learning right.
I appreciate too how he calls out like it stinks that this is being attributed to the entire Somali population. Obviously, not all Somalis are complicit in this. Not everyone is guilty, but it's clear that a specific group of people has taken advantage of welfare programs here in the United States for their own benefit. That's a significant amount of money. $1.9 million is a significant amount of money, and it's strange for a business like this because you have to think a lot of the businesses that immigrants open up when they come to the United States, they're going to be bodegas, like gas stations, facilities like this, so service providers, home health clinics, things like that. They're maid service providers, lawn care, and like home maintenance. Just use your brain, okay? Think about people you have seen. I know all the time we have folks coming to our door, leaving business cards, offering for tree removal services and lawn care and all that kind of stuff, okay? Those are the types of businesses that immigrants and migrants alike typically open up when they come to the United States. They're small mom and pop businesses that really aren't going to generate millions of dollars in revenue. They might, if you're good at what you do and you have a good clientele base, but these businesses typically are going to provide what you need to keep your family afloat, but not much more than that. So right off the bat, it's really bizarre that these people are able to extract millions of dollars out of business models that typically don't generate millions of dollars in revenue. The other thing that's really concerning about this is just the type of building that it's in. Any facility with children should not have blacked out windows or blacked out doors in the absence of any windows at all. That's just a clear safety issue. Like when you're dealing with children, you want to be able to see what's happening, right? And so right off the bat, like that also is a major red flag. And so this is another clip from this same learning center, the same daycare facility in Minneapolis, and him and his colleague are accosted by a woman as they're filming, and they're trying to investigate this. And I think it's really telling of how polarized the American public is, and how we're not on the same page, and some people don't view this as an issue, and why this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. There's so many people who are living in a delusional fantasy that everyone and anyone should be able to come to the United States, do whatever they want, take advantage of, taxpayer-funded programs with no consequence, and the government is allowed to dole out all these resources to these communities at the expense of tax-paying American citizens who, born and raised here for several generations. So I think that's important to keep in mind. So let's dive into this clip.
Now we're being followed by the Somalis. This is another daycare center, absolutely no signage, and there's no footprints in the snow of children playing outside. $5 million within the past
5.9 million in 2 years. 5.9 million they received in 2 years. That facility right there.
And now we have a group of Somalis telling us in our vehicle right now.
From this daycare center, we headed over to the infamous Quality Learning Center, which actually spells Quality Leering Center on the outside of their sign. That's how blatant this fraud is here at this daycare.
Don't open up!
So this is Quality Leering Center. I meant to say Quality Learning Center.
Don't open up!
They said they spelt learning wrong.
Here. Don't open up!
How do you have ice here, ma'am? I'm literally a YouTuber.
Don't open up!
Ma'am, what do you think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
Don't open up! We have ice!
And what do you think about this place?
So this is like how crazy these people are. This is some Karen in Minneapolis who's claiming two white dudes clearly filming, like you have a Gen Zer and a boomer, clearly filming, not carrying any weapons. Their faces are clearly visible. Like they're obviously not ICE. And she's claiming that they're immigration, enforcement, and they're coming to arrest them. Like this is how insane these people have become. It's like you can show the fraud that's happening. You can bring the receipts, and they can't see with their own eyes right in front of them what's going on.
It's being licensed for 99 children
Don't open up!
and getting $4 million
Don't
over
open
the
up! It's ice!
$4 million in the last 2 years.
Go away!
What do you think about that? Are you in
Go
favor?
away!
Are you in favor of that?
Go away!
You know where
You're
the-
not welcome here.
Are you-
Shame on you!
Are you in favor of $1.9
Shame
million
on you.
going
It's ice.
illegally,
Don't open up!
fraudulently to this business that has Quality Learning Center but can't even spell learning right on the door?
Don't open up!
Ma'am, we are not ICE.
I don't care who you are, you don't belong here.
I belong here just like you belong here.
Don't open up, it's ice!
You do realize that there's supposed to be 99 children here at this building, but there's no one here. This is a child daycare center.
Says 99 children. Paid $1.9 million this year in CCAP funding. Do you know where the children are? Were they kidnapped? They run away? Where are the children? This is state of Minnesota. Right here.
And who are you?
My name's Nick Shirley, ma'am.
And who are you with?
Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley on YouTube.
Yeah, so who are you with here?
Oh, he's just been doing some research investigating the fraud that's taking
These
place
are just
here in
citizens,
Minnesota.
by the way. They're two private citizens.
This lady, she's calling us ICE. We're just trying to put law and order back in the streets of the United States. Get rid of all the fraud.
Yeah, so no different than you or I just going out and investigating something and wanting to understand what's happening. You have just two random dudes, completely unaffiliated, not working for anyone, just putting this information out there, and she can't even comprehend it. But there's a couple things to note about that interaction. We have a daycare crisis in the United States right now, right? We have a childcare crisis where a lot of people are not having children simply because the cost of childcare is so prohibitively expensive. And so you have a shortage of access to affordable childcare. This has been a major political talking point for people. You can see here that Nick Shirley actually reposted this clip on top of a tweet from Tim Waltz back in 2023 about how childcare providers are so important. I mean, the state of New Mexico, one of the poorest states in the country, just initiated universal childcare. They're the first state to do so because they're struggling, because they need people to work and they want to attract people to move to the state. So there's a general understanding that childcare is incredibly expensive, and it's become prohibitively expensive such that people aren't working and people aren't having children, okay? And so the fact that you have a childcare facility, regardless of the quality of it and some of the red flags I mentioned, that is registered for 99 children and has 0 children in it is a huge problem. Like, we have this issue. Why are there no children there? You know, why is no one being serviced? That's a huge problem. So he's rightfully asking, like, you know, where are the children? And then, you know, like there was a comment one of them made, like, oh, you know, have they been kidnapped? And again, this is another undertone of the whole conversation about the migrant issue here in the United States has completely gone under the radar, is you have hundreds of thousands of kids. Like, we just don't know, right? Because if you're not documented, we don't know who's coming into the country. So there's been estimates that there's hundreds of thousands of kids that are being trafficked. And it's reasonable to assume that is indeed the case. I mean, the New York Times has covered this. They have covered that there are teenagers who've been brought into this country. Part of the migrant program in preceding administrations that allowed undocumented migrant minors to come find refuge with related family members. Oftentimes they go live with uncles who may or may not actually be related to them, you know, which is in itself another issue. But then the New York Times has found that these folks, these kids, you know, 14, 15, 16 years old, instead of going to school, they're going to work and make Cheetos and Cheerios, and they're working in factories, manufacturing food. So exploitation of children is certainly happening. And this is one of the things that folks on the left completely ignore. Like, you have different migrant communities who have come into the United States. They have different moral values and code and ethics that they're bringing with them, and they're bringing children with them, and those children are not being protected. They're being exploited. Many are being trafficked, and they're being hurt against their will. And so the fact that he even like brings that up, and this woman didn't even bat an eye, like doesn't even care. The people who profess to care for the downtrodden, right? These are the social justice warriors who are going to bat, you know, for these communities. They don't actually care about the children within these communities. They care about the moral righteousness of the cause that they're professing to support. They don't actually care about the people involved in this at all. And that really comes to light in this clip. This next one is another one of them filming. This is one, I believe, caught by actual Somalis. Many of the times when they did find a property that had someone present in it, they were, you know, accosted, kicked out. There was one instance where the police was actually called on them, and they were escorted from a property, which is a big deal because keep in mind, these Somali businesses are receiving taxpayer-funded dollars. So you can make the argument that a building might be private property, but if you're going to investigate a business that is receiving taxpayer-funded dollars, it's different than a private business, right? It's kind of like think of like college and universities, right? Like most public universities, you can go and hang out on the campus. They're public. That's why Charlie Kirk did a lot of his tents and debates at public universities rather than private universities, because public universities are open to the public. They're taxpayer funded. They're completely different and have different rules regarding who can access them, right? So if you have a business that is funded by the taxpayers should have a right to audit that business. And so here you'll see they're clearly not being allowed to do so. And the reaction from the Somali community is like one of a mob mentality, like, get out of here, you don't belong here. They use racist terms to talk about how they should go to white businesses instead of Somali businesses. And that theme has come up over and over again in the entire video. It's that not just get out of here because you don't belong here, but get out of here. We don't want you. You're not Somali. And so it's very clear that these people aren't just creating businesses for the sake of committing fraud. They're also just creating businesses for the benefit of their own community. They're not actually doing anything to service and build the broader Minneapolis community writ large. So, that too is also really telling, I think. Let me turn this on.
Get the fuck out of here!
You cannot come in here.
We don't care. We don't know where it is. Get out. That's not your job. You don't know that. Get out.
He's recording.
Get out of here. Fucking idiot. Hey.
They're recording.
Get out of here, man. Move.
I didn't give you permission to record me.
What kind of no? Why you come here? Why you have permission? No. Get out of here. Get out of here. Oh, you have to stop the camera. You have to stop the camera. You have to stop the camera.
You make stuff up. This is a lie. I don't care. Who do you work for? Who do you work for? No, who do you work for? Who do you work for? Shirley. I don't care about Nick Shirley. This guy. But who do you work for? Nick Shirley. I don't care about Nick Shirley. That's who he's working for today. Nick Shirley.
Don't stop here. Don't stop here.
Get out of here. Yes.
Would you like to?
Okay, so the thing too with this is happening across multiple different contexts. This isn't just an isolated incident. He's done recordings like this as well in New York City, where he's gone to sell counterfeit goods, where other migrants are selling illegal goods. Same response, like they hate the cameras in their face. There have been other YouTubers who have gone to Minnesota. Same thing. They've been quite hostile and kicked out of stores. Told to stop filming. All that kind of stuff. Like in America, you have freedom of speech. You have the free right to record. Yeah, like there's certain laws and stuff that vary state by state. They're on a public sidewalk right now. There's no reason why they can't record and why they can't document this. And obviously it's because I think folks within this community are clearly obvious of the fraud that is happening. A lot of them are complicit in it, whether or not they're actually the ones starting these businesses. They're aware that this is happening. It's a very insular community. A lot of these people don't speak English. They all live together in the same buildings, so it's a very close knit community. And so this really is a mob mentality. They're accosting these guys just for showing up and asking questions, as any tax-paying citizen rightfully should be allowed to do. Okay, so diving in now, one of the big things with this is that opening these types of businesses aren't actually easy. Like when you talk about a daycare center, home health care center, autism center, anything like medical transport, like these businesses, not just anyone can register for them. And then that's become a huge problem, right? And that is why there is a daycare crisis in the United States. There are lots of stay-at-home moms who would love to open up their homes to, taking care of a couple of kids, maybe some after-school kids, whatever. But because of all of the regulation that's involved, all of the red tape, all of the bureaucracy, many just say it's not worth the cost. So this is a post from someone who was looking into opening a childcare center. They found a location. They talked to the state licensing folks. They did the math. And they decided that they couldn't handle all the regulations. You had to track the food, the number of toilets, hand washing stations, feet from the door to the nearest pot shop, staff training. Everyone has to do like CPR. There's all this kinds of stuff that you have to do. And this is with a lot of businesses, by the way. This isn't just like, these types of businesses. There's regulation with that regard. Anytime you want to build an apartment building or you want to build a new building, there's regulation. There's tons of regulation. And this is important because how is it possible that these businesses could be approved to get state-funded, state-subsidized resources for fraudulent daycare centers that clearly aren't taking care of any children, and bypass all of these regulatory hurdles? And this is why folks are presuming that the government is complicit, because you have people who are supposed to be licensing, who are supposed to be regulating, who are supposed to be auditing, especially when there are taxpayer-funded dollars at play. I mean, they've hired how many IRS agents in the past couple of years, right? Like, they're more concerned about auditing you and I on whether or not we file our taxes correctly, but they don't care about millions of dollars going to these fraudulent businesses. And what has all this regulation led to? It has led to businesses just simply not operating. I mean, talk about, this is one example, but talk about housing affordability and the housing crisis, right? Part of the reason why there's a lack of affordable housing in the United States is because of regulation. It's much easier to bypass all of the red tape and the bureaucracy and the regulations if you build luxury apartment complexes than if you build single family homes, right? So that's part of the problem too. There's just so much regulation, and democratic run cities tend to go hand in hand. A lot of this is because regulation is a revenue stream for a lot of these government agencies. So just to give you a quick example, I spent a brief amount of time working at a community bank in upstate New York. I was like a regulatory generalist. Like, I don't even know what I did. It was a bullshit job. But there were a ton of regulations that the bank had to follow. Banks have lots of rules they have to follow. There's a lot of compliance they have to do. And part of that includes ensuring they aren't engaged in redlining. So redlining is where banks don't issue mortgages to groups of people based on race or ethnicity or other identity markers. And so making sure that you are opening up access to mortgages fairly and equitably to people, you're not discriminating. So the bank I worked with had gotten slapped with a fine by the regulatory agency in New York State. So not the federal level, at the state level. They had gotten slapped with a fine because apparently they had been discriminating. And the basis of that claim was that the bank had denied one Hispanic applicant a mortgage. Okay. The problem with this is that in the area I was working in, it's a predominantly white working class area. Yes, there's a small African-American community, but for the most part, I'd say it's probably like 75 to 80% white. There might be a handful of Hispanic families. Are very rare, not common. So let's say you give out 100 mortgages and one of those mortgage applicants is Hispanic. And let's say for one reason or another, that person was not qualified to get the mortgage. There's lots of reasons why you might not be qualified to get the mortgage. On paper, it looks like 100% of Hispanic applicants are denied mortgages by this bank because 1 out of 1 Hispanic applicant was denied a mortgage. So because of how that looked on paper, the bank was slapped with a huge fine by the regulatory agency in Albany. And frankly, they didn't care. I just remember like asking questions about it because I thought how absurd, like, why are they paying this fine? This is really stupid. And it really made me realize that the people in Albany didn't care. It was clearly a racket, that the regulators were getting paid, and the only way they get paid, they generate revenue and they're able to keep their jobs because government bureaucracies run by generating more and more revenue. The more they can grow their budgets, the more successful they are considered. So the more regulatory, the more regulations they have and the more fines that they can collect fees on, the higher the chance that they're going to generate more revenue for their offices. So that's basically what was happening. It was a complete racket. They had trumped up this fake charge of discrimination and racism in order to collect a fee off the bank to charge a fine and collect a fee. It wasn't actual discrimination. You just had one Hispanic family out of 100 in an area where there are no Hispanic families who got denied, and because of that, that served as the basis of their claim for racism. So there is a racket. There is a racket where these agencies are incentivized to fine people and enforce regulations. So the fact that that is the operational environment for most, I say, Democrat-run government bureaucracies, and the fact that they apply that standard to folks like this, but they weren't applying that standard to the Somali community, really speaks volumes as to what is happening, why so many people are upset. Okay, this is another one. Benny Johnson posted this. I've seen this video elsewhere. So how exactly is this fraud happening? So you have all of these businesses that are registered, many of them to Somali business owners. How exactly are they engaging in fraud? Well, this is one way they're doing it. They're bringing their kids, they're checking them in, they're leaving with their kids, they're billing the state for the care that didn't happen, and the parents are getting a kickback. So the parents are in on this. And part of the reason why this is plausible is because you have to think about these communities and how they work. A lot of the women in these communities aren't exactly going and working 9-to-5 jobs. These aren't girl boss communities. These are traditional Islamic communities. Many of them, the women are staying home and raising the children. So this is also obvious question, like, why is a conservative community, a conservative religious community, where the women typically aren't going to work, or if they are working, it's in like administrative roles, like at some of these daycare facilities. Why do you need so much daycare, right? These aren't girl bosses in Manhattan who are going to work at Madison Avenue offices. Like, these are women who are staying at home. So why exactly do you need so many daycare facilities? And so this is a theory that someone has posited on X, and I think it's plausible. So one of the potential loopholes that they could be exploiting is that within this population, it's not, these people aren't necessarily legally married. So you could have a husband and wife, they could have 5 kids, but they're married in a religious ceremony. They go through a Muslim ceremony. They're not actually married in the eyes of the state. They haven't gotten a marriage license and gone through the formal process, right? And so on paper, these women are single moms, right? Dad's not in the picture. And we know this is plausible because you have seen this happen within the EBT community. Snap influencers have gone online and shared the exact same thing, that's what they do, that they don't include their partner's income, whether that's a boyfriend, fiance, husband, whatever. They have created separation on paper to show that they are single moms, even if they do have a source of income coming in through their, the male in the home. And so that could be what's happening here is you have these women who on paper are not legally married to their husbands, even if they are religiously. And then they are able, for government subsidies, about 81% of the Somali community within the state of Minnesota is on some sort of welfare program. So that could be food stamps, Section 8 housing, what have you. So they're able for these subsidies, and then they can go and create an LLC as a daycare, start running their own daycare on paper, and here collect daycare subsidies for their own kids. So that could be exactly what's happening here, where these people are taking their kids to these daycare facilities, knowing full well that they're not going to keep them there throughout the day, that they're just going to take them home. And whoever is the one who took the initiative to set up the LLC here might be paying these families to come and bring their kids. So it could be an under the table kind of inside thing, like, hey, we're going to get X amount back from the state. I'll give you 10%. Just bring your kids, make it look like it's operational. So they're earning money by faking having kids go to daycare. So that helps the moms. And then obviously the business owners are able to access state funding. So that is certainly a plausible thing that's happening. So this is much bigger than Minnesota. Nick Shirley uncovers what's happening in Minnesota, but this is much bigger than that. So people have obviously gone wild over this because it's a big story. They've taken their own initiative to start investigating other areas. So in Washington State, this is happening. According to government databases, there are 5,000 childcare facilities in Washington State. 500 of them are run by Somalis. They don't have a physical address. There's no hours of operation. They do participate in government subsidies. So Minnesota is just the tip of the iceberg. This is likely a broader problem, not just within the daycare not within daycare providers, but within other providers, business providers as well. This is another example of something that's been found in Maine. So this is Medicaid fraud. So people billing for fake services or services that are not covered by Medicaid. And, you know, from 2020 to 2024, we're talking millions of dollars. Again, this is very plausible. This happens all the time. You can Google Medicaid fraud. You'll find lots of doctors coming up who have been prosecuted and charged with engaging in fraud. So this isn't just a conspiracy or a unique thing. This happens. This happens all the time. This is another YouTuber, Nate Friedman. He is kind of similar to Nick Shirley, goes in and talks to people and does some investigative stuff. He went to a migrant shelter in Massachusetts and found out that these facilities were, you know, charging the government to provide meals to these migrants. They were giving them free Lyft rides, all that kind of stuff. So it's not even just, you know, one migrant community. It's across the board. And people knew this because with Doge earlier in 2025, I think it really shed light on just how much fraud was happening in New York City. This is one of the reasons why the Trump administration has been cracking down on the sanctuary cities, is because this has been happening. They have been enabling this. They have been taking publicly funded taxpayer dollars and then distributing it in terms of free services to different migrant communities. So again, if the Somalis are doing it in Minnesota, they're doing it in Maine, they're doing it in Washington, they're also doing it, other communities are doing it as well. And of course, this is all with the support of co-conspirators on the government and the nonprofit side of things, because you need a mechanism to pass the money on to these communities, right? They're not just, you know, going to the bank or like magically getting checks in the mail. Like someone inside of Minnesota, someone inside of all these states has to be approving these businesses, approving their ability to collect subsidies, and then issuing the checks themselves. So the scope of the fraud is widespread. And this is important. This is all the different types of programs that could potentially be a part of this. So again, it's not just daycare, right? Anyone who's providing like adult services, rehabilitation, mental health services, like the autism stuff, early intervention kind of stuff, housing support, you know, home healthcare communities, residential treatment. And these are just, you know, some of the government programs. And then there's the whole nonprofit realm, right? Like the nonprofit industrial complex is a huge problem. You got all sorts of different areas where taxpayer dollars are being funneled to provide services, and those services aren't actually being provided, and there's no one within the government who is auditing to make sure what these people claim to be doing are actually doing what they're doing. And this is why fraud has been so rampant for so long, because there's absolutely no accountability mechanism. This is another one. I'm not going to play this video because he's very explicit, but this is important, and this leads into a bigger problem and really what this fraud is actually all about. So this is a guy who tried to apply for Section 8 housing 20 years ago in Columbus, Ohio. Couldn't, because when he went to the office to apply, the parking lot was filled with Somalis. He said that they were camped out in tents, had been waiting for hours to get access to housing. So you have migrant populations who are pushing out legitimate American citizens from accessing these programs. And what's crazy about this is folks on the left are going to make the race argument, right? They're going to defend the Somalis for doing what they're doing because they're black. Here you have a black man born and raised in the United States who is being treated as a second-class citizen within the welfare program itself. So it's clear this has become so hierarchical where, you know, if you check the right boxes, if you are, you know, if you're a Muslim, if you are an immigrant, if you're trans, if you're a person of color, whatever press group you want to be, like if you check all the right boxes, the more boxes that you check, the higher up you go in preferential treatment in the system. But the housing aspect of this is really important because that's where the crux of the real fraud is. So part of this is financial fraud. Yes, that is a huge problem. But what is the means to the end of the fraud itself? And this gets down to voter fraud and displacing American voters with migrant voters, people who the Democratic Party can rely on to continue perpetuating their power. And so this is how John Lefebvre explains it. And this is quite alarming because this is clearly what's happening. So he says, you know, this is how elections are getting stolen and they're getting undermined. And oh, by the way, Minnesota is a state where you do not need a voter ID to be able to vote. And it's a state that enabled migrants to get driver's licenses. So these same people who are opening fraudulent businesses are also able to effectively get a license and ID to vote. And because they don't check IDs anyways, when you go to vote, it doesn't matter. You can just say your name and you can go vote. And so what's happening is they're filling up the voter rolls with as many names as possible, including people who are illegal, people who are dead, and residents who have left the state. I will tell you, as someone who's moved across state lines frequently, they do not update this information. I got a jury summons when I lived in North Carolina, when I was no longer a New York State resident and had my North Carolina license. And then just last year, I got a notice from the New York State DMV to renew my license in New York State. I haven't been a resident of New York State in several years, so there's no reason why I should still be in any sort of New York State government database. But it's clear if I'm getting jury summons from New York State and I'm getting a DMV license renewal notice, that I am still in some sort of New York State database. And so who knows what voter roll I'm on. I remember when I got that DMV notice to renew my registration, it had 2 addresses listed. It had the address I was living at in New York listed, but it also had my North Carolina address as well listed as my current address and where I was registered to vote. So it had listed on this piece of paper telling me to renew my license that I was registered to vote in North Carolina and in New York State. And so, you tell me. But they're filling up the voter rolls. They're legislating for unsolicited ballots to be automatically mailed out. So basically just sending out ballots. You don't have to request the ballot. They're just sending them to you. And they're paying people to collect, fill out, and sign and send back the ballots once they've been received. So this is how he says it works. So you take a random low-income apartment building with 100 units. This is a demographic that doesn't usually vote, and they rarely check their mail because it's always junk. And this is why the low-income apartment building that I talked about with this guy really matters, because if you're displacing American citizens who have a legitimate right to vote with migrant communities who don't speak English, don't identify as American, have no interest in becoming an American, but are still being allowed to vote, they're much easier to co-opt, right? And coerce and give incentives in order to get the votes, right? And so apparently this person's claiming that activist groups will recruit low-income residents to collect these ballots and pay them for every completed ballot, much the same as the Somali daycares are purportedly paying moms to bring their kids to the daycare, make it seem like that they are actually dropping their kids off when in reality they're not. There's no accountability or oversight. These recruits, so this is the option. Like, you can either track down the recipients and encourage them to vote legally, or you can collect as many blank ballots as possible, fill them out themselves, and they'll make money every time they fill one out. And so these ballots end up in the mail. They're, wherever, and they're counted alongside legitimate ballots that have never been verified or signature matched. And so this is something that's happening. And again, this is happening under the guise of access, right? So giving mail-in ballots because grandma can't make it down to the polling station, or not requiring voter ID because it's racist, because apparently, and this is something people have said, which is wild, because apparently people of color don't know how to go to the DMV and get a license. They know how to go get Section 8 housing, and they know how to get EBT, right? But they don't know how to go get a license. It's just so racist to assume that people don't know how to get a license. I've had to go to Social Security recently, and a lot of people in there didn't know how to speak English. So there was a lot of people who could figure out how to navigate Social Security, being non-natives to the United States and not speaking English. I think people who are native to the United States, who've been born and raised here, lived here for several generations, can figure out how the systems work too. So it's incredibly racist and dismissive to say that. This is why this all matters, right? You are clearly exploiting a population that is low income. You're congregating them into these buildings, into these apartment complexes where you can effectively manage them. You're giving them ballots, and then you're incentivizing people to turn in those ballots and fill them out. So, it's clear what's happening. Another thing that is happening is that some of these Somali run daycare facilities have been found to also be funding political campaigns. And this is alarming, right? So you have, you're importing voters, okay? You're importing voters you're enabling them to vote, you're incentivizing them through financial remuneration to vote. Then the ones who own these childcare centers and these other, fraudulent businesses, they are using taxpayer-funded dollars to fund candidates with the money they're given, and then they are able to elect the very politicians, Democrats, who enable them to keep living this lifestyle that they are clearly benefiting from. So, it's not just, like he says here, that, Medicare fraud. This is electoral fraud. Like this is clearly a problem. And this is another example. This is a woman in Washington, who received funding from a child care facility in Minneapolis. And you have to ask, like, you have a Somali population in Minnesota, a Somali population in Washington. Why is a legitimate business that really shouldn't be making millions of dollars to begin with, doling out money to political campaigns in Washington? And there's been video clips that have gone around X as well of politicians within these communities who are rising up, and they acknowledge that they're doing this for their community, they're doing this for their homeland, they're doing this to send money and support back to Somalia. This is all about supporting Somalia and the Somali community. This has nothing to do about America. And it's a flagrant disregard for this country and everything it's built on. And so the cherry on top of all of this is, okay, well, why are these politicians trying to buy votes and have, import a population of people who can continuously vote for them? Well, this is why. You have folks like Ilhan Omar. This is just one example. Yes, she is a representative from Minnesota. She's also going through her own fraud allegations at the moment as well, with regard to potentially marrying her brother in the past to help him get citizenship, which is a clear no-no. But apparently her net worth grew from negative $45,000 in 2019 to $30 million this year. I'm just gonna say, like, as someone with a comparable net worth, I have student loans and all that kind of stuff. I can't even grasp mentally how to get to $1 million. I would love to get to 100K, right? Like making the jump from where I'm at now to 100K would be huge, right? That's chump change compared to this. So I don't know how she magically went from negative 45K to $30 million. So one of the answers, of course, is the stock market. Everyone knows, just look at Nancy Pelosi's trades. These people go into Congress and they become insanely wealthy off insider trading. But part of it too could be kickbacks. Could be, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, I'll give you this, I'll ensure this happens for you, you give me a commission on the back end. And this happens all the time in other contexts. It's not unreasonable to assume that this would also be happening in politics as well, and likely is. Okay, so this now gets into some of the responses from folks on X talking about this. Like I said, people are up in arms about this. They're really upset, and rightfully so, because the entire time for the last, 5 years at this point, I think, really post George Floyd, things started to take a turn. Everyone's been called a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe, a Nazi, a fascist, like all these names, in order to kind of coerce people to comply with the moral program of the Democratic Party. And it really honestly isn't necessarily just a political party anymore. It has become a full-fledged political religion. Like there is an ideology, a dogma that shapes this political party. It is a full-on religion. There are certain sacraments you have to uphold and protect, and you have to check all of these different boxes. And so part of that has been, distinguishing those who are racist, transphobe, Nazis, white supremacists, whatever, from everyone who is not. And they've created a moral delineation. So the polarization that you're seeing in the United States right now, it's not just, we disagree on this policy, or we disagree on how to tax or what to tax and that kind of stuff. It's no longer that. It's, you are not morally in line. You are not a moral person. You are immoral. You are an enemy. And this is how Charlie Kirk got assassinated, because the framing has been changed such that your political enemies are now existential threats that have to be extinguished at all costs. And so that's how we've gotten to the vitriolic state that we're in now. And so people have increasingly gotten really upset about this. And I think more and more people have started to say, no, I'm done. Like, call me a transphobe, call me a Nazi, call me, white supremacist, whatever. I'm done. And they're pushing back. And you're really starting to see this now come out on social media. People are just they're done. Like, they have nothing left to lose. You can't really take anything more from them. They're done. They're done. And this is one of the reasons why, people are going to work, spending 60 to 80 hours a week working. Uncle Sam is taxing them, right? So they're spending time away from their kids, dealing with a lot of crazy stuff at work. Like, most people don't really enjoy the jobs they're in. Let's be honest, okay? They're driving insane commutes because of cost of living and where they live and that kind of stuff. And Uncle Sam is taking a significant portion of their paycheck, and not just in terms of taxes, rising costs as well. And part of these rising costs are a result of subsidies, which is a whole separate topic for another video. But when you have government subsidies, it drives up the cost. Just look at what's happened to the healthcare market and healthcare premiums, right? So not an accident that if the government is subsidizing daycare facilities are indeed fraudulent, of course, the rest, everyone else is paying for it in higher costs, right? So everyone is one way or another is paying for it. Direct taxes, subsidies, debasement of the currency, we're all paying for it, right? And so it's like, what are we doing? Like, we're doing this so that people who hate the United States, who don't want to be here, they want to be here because they can take advantage of what America has to offer, but they don't actually want to be here to build the country and contribute to it. Like they hate us. They're not contributing anything. If anything, they're parasites on the system. They're taking from it. And this is what we're exchanging for. Like, this is the trade-off. This is the bargain we've made. And I think people are waking up and they're saying, this is not what we signed up for. Like, no one wants to work, 80 hours a week for Uncle Sam to take their income, to spend it on exorbitant prices at the grocery store, to not be able to afford childcare, just so someone in the Somali community in Minneapolis can make millions of dollars off of fake daycare centers. It's just a slap in the face to every single hardworking American. And another thing, this is a really good post here. This person says, I don't think everyone realizes how polarizing it is to watch someone steal an amount of money they've worked 30 years for by throwing up a sign in a vacant building and sending the government an invoice. And this is again, part of the proposition of working is everyone works for 30, 40 years, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll have $1 million in the bank. Probably not after, all the 401k fees. But maybe, hopefully, you'll have $1 million in the bank account to retire on. And so, yeah, like the day-to-day grind, right? You're going, 60 hours, 80 hours a week, going through the grind to work for Uncle Sam to make money. But then you're putting in 30 years of time to earn enough money in your retirement account that one of these fake businesses has earned in a year, just again by slapping up a misspelt sign in a building that no one is clearly using and working in, and they're billing the government for it. It's absolutely absurd. This guy, and I can totally resonate with this. This guy has been working for 2 decades, so 20 years, taking on 100% of the risk of building a business, so bankruptcy, litigation, tax, audit, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, this is something like I have to deal with too, right? Like, I have to work with an accountant to help me file my taxes because they are quite complex. I have to make sure I keep paper records in case I'm audited, So it is a slap in the face. Like, I have to go through all these extra steps to cover my bases in case I'm audited over misreporting $100. But you have these Somali businesses who are making millions of dollars, and there's absolutely no audit risk for them. It's insane. This person talks about the headaches of running a business. So you're doing employment, sales, accounting, legal, insurance, software vendors, platforms. They've formed and ran a law-abiding business. They earn a mediocre income because, let's be real here, most people know the ones who are making millions of dollars are outliers. A lot of business owners, are barely getting by. This person has bootstrapped everything, provided jobs, provide livelihoods to employees and contractors that he works with, and coming to the realization that all he had to do was create a shell company with a misspelled sign, locked doors, blacked out windows, in order to claim millions of dollars in revenue from the state that is 100% payable to him. All exchange for his vote, right? Because this is all about earning votes. It's a sham. He says it absolutely true. It's a sham. And I think everyone who's ever run a business is looking at this like, what the heck? Lots of hardworking Americans, lots of legitimate daycare providers are like, what the heck? These people are providing meals and taking care of kids and going through all the regulatory hoops and hurdles to stay in business. And they're, you have people who are cheating the system. And it's, again, a slap in the face to average, Americans. This one is really heartbreaking. I'm going to play this one in full because this person worked for 36 years, paid taxes, did everything right. And this person gets less than these fraudulent businesses run by Somalis in Minnesota. So again, you're going to work 30 plus years, 60 to 80 hours a week, hoping that you have $1 million in the bank. Most people aren't going to get that. So what are they going to do? They're going to rely on other federal programs like Social Security to cover the gaps. And even that isn't going to provide them with the living that they need to support themselves. So they're going to live in poverty once they retire after spending decades of working and most of their life in service to a job they hate that Uncle Sam taxed them out the wazoo for. Also, these people can claim build fraudulent businesses.
Here I am today in front of the Social Security office trying to figure out why I only get $876 a month on Social Security after working 36 years and 10 years off and on, but 36 years straight, and raising 5 kids, and now I get $876 a month. What is that? To be continued.
This tweet says it all. After a lifetime of work, this is all I get. Meanwhile, billions are sent to people who never paid a dime. And that's what's happening is the vast majority of people in these communities have created fraudulent businesses. They're not working, or if they're working within the community, getting paid by this funding. So it's all, being laundered within the same community. They're not contributing to the broader economy. They're not contributing to American culture. They're not building anything of value here. They're just extracting and enriching themselves, all while supporting a political machine that is trying to harvest as many votes as they can to retain power. It's completely insidious. So this clip, Nick Shirley was obviously, he's gotten a lot of attention because of this, but he was on Fox News, and they talked about how the sitting governor of Minnesota called him a white supremacist for investigating what's happening. Keep in mind, Tim Walz, not too long ago, was on the ticket to be the VP for the Democratic nomination, right? So if Kamala Harris had won in 2024, this man, Tim Walz, would be sitting in the White House right now. That's how insidious and awful this is.
This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy.
Also, I don't know who the they is. Like, Nick Shirley's a 23-year-old dude, like, doing the hustle on YouTube, no different than what I'm doing here, offering commentary on what's happening. Like, who's the they here? There's no they.
So it sounds to me, Nick, that Governor Tim Walz is saying that you and others that are out there trying to expose this, you're doing it because you're white supremacists. What is your response to him?
Yeah, Tim wants votes. There are entire apartment complexes where white people have been pushed out of these apartment complexes because Somalians have taken over and they're inside of these towns like Minneapolis, where they can go get votes from these people. And if you have 100,000 people that will vote for you because you're going to enable and let this stuff happen, and because you're going to call a white person racist for calling out facts, this is what's going to happen to a state like Minnesota. Minnesotans, they say Minnesota nice, but they are very upset. And I fully understand why they're upset, because they don't have a governor who's actually working for them. He's actually working against them.
Yeah. And so, again, this gets back to the whole, voter fraud component of this too, at the very top of all of this. But this is why I think a lot of people realize now that the highest levels of leadership within Minnesota are complicit in this. They understand what is going on. They are deliberately making it possible for these communities to do what they're doing in order to get the votes. Like, yeah, these communities might be getting kickbacks. Some of the politicians might be getting kickbacks. Kickbacks don't necessarily have to be financial, right? They can be votes too. So a lot of that is what's happening as well. Okay, now I want to shift to how the left is talking about this. So this is on MSNBC. This is someone an opinion writer for the New York Times, everyone's favorite liberal publication, who went on to MSNBC and is talking about it and claims that the fraud isn't actually happening.
Sure. So these were funds that were meant to go to help feed hungry people during the COVID pandemic, to help keep people in their homes who were at risk of homelessness. So first of all, if there is fraud there, that should be fully investigated, no matter where it is, whether it's in a Democratic-led state, a Republican-led state. I mean, let's pull back. So absolutely, it should be investigated.
But the thing is, they're not going to investigate the fraud if the people who are committing the fraud are shielded by the political ideology. And that's the problem. If you check the right boxes, in this case, the Somalis are Muslim, they're immigrant communities, and they're people of color, they check all the right boxes, they're not going to be audited, they're not going to be investigated, because fraud can't possibly exist, or if it does exist, they're allowed to commit fraud as a result of America's original sin. And then that's how a lot of the people on the left view this. It's like, okay, well, so what if they are? If they are, well, consider this a form of reparations.
The question is, why is this a priority in a different kind of way? The politicization of the DOJ and the FBI is undeniable. So whether they are reliable narrators is the big question. And this is what happens when you weaponize and politicize federal agencies that are not meant to be, politicized. And I think the American people are right to ask the question, well, can we trust you? And that's a sad thing to say as an American. Let's recall, too, that there's also other scandals in other states. For example, the Mississippi welfare scandal. And this is not unique to politics. Americans know that. But of course, the other factor here is that because it looks like the Somali population in Minnesota, the Somali immigrant population may have been involved in some way, those people are being scapegoated, and that community is being scapegoated in a way that certainly serves the far right.
Yeah, so this is, again, a far right Trump conspiracy to scapegoat a particular population, when in reality, I think a lot of these people just are complicit in it. Not everyone, of course. There are going to be some who are not, but I think a lot of folks are, and they need to be held accountable for their actions. All right, so this is another clip of Nick Shirley, part of the broader investigation he did. But he confronted a Minnesota state representative about the fraud that was happening, and she refused to talk to him about it.
What's going on here in Minnesota? And do you think this fraud
Sir, I don't know who
crosses?
you are.
My name's Nick Shirley. Do you think this fraud is Republican or Democrat, or just facts that fraud is happening? Because because that's what I heard you talking about. That
I know what I said is that
because
what we're talking
we want
about
to build trust, but fraud is fraud. So why should we be enabling fraud to happen here?
No, I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
Okay, sir.
No. This is not. Sir. When are you going to hold Governor Walz? No. She is a representative for the state of Minnesota. Yes or no?
Excuse me?
Yes. Are you?
If you're going to talk to me like that.
Are you going to say to her, I'm a disability advocate.
I heard you, and
I
you got a chance
overstimulated.
to testify.
Thank you for testifying today.
No.
Ma'am.
She needs to ask you questions because she represents.
The facts are the facts that fraud is
Liberal
happening
white
here.
women, gotta love
and
them.
it's not a nonpartisan issue. How come you think fraud has been able to happen so much underneath?
I think if you've been listening to our hearings, we've had now 10 hearings on this. And so there's really good data from the people who both work within the administration as well as who, both Democrat and Republicans. I think what you heard today is that the Republicans who control this committee are not actually interested in solving fraud. What they're interested in is telling a story.
This fraud has happened underneath Democrat leader Tim Walz.
There has been Medicaid fraud across the country under Democrats and Republicans. There's fraud within the Trump administration. We have is fraud. Private providers have made.
So keep in mind that Tim Walz went on and did a press conference denying that the fraud was happening at the daycare centers, claiming it was white supremacy. And now you have his band of feminist liberals in the legislature in Minnesota kind of not holding him accountable. And this is another problem within a problem. But this is why having women in these positions is really problematic, because they are the ones who are enabling it. They are the enablers of the political religion of the left, and they are the ones who are enforcing adherence to the ideology. There is no one who is more vocal about making sure everyone stays in line, in tow with the party line, like liberal white women. It's very clear that is happening. Okay, so this tweet is really telling. So a lot of people want Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, to be held accountable. I think that is absolutely merited. But Leonardo Joni calls something out that might be actually bigger. Tim Walz isn't really that smart. He's pretty dumb. If you watched any of the campaign stuff from 2024, he's not really the sharpest tool in the shed. And so she's making the claim that he's been placed in this position, in a leadership position, much like Kamala Harris, to be honest, because he's an idiot and he'll go along with the scam. And that this is much bigger than Somalis and it's bigger than Walz. That is why no one is being arrested. And I think that is probably true, and you see evidence of that with the Jeffrey Epstein files that came to light recently. Like, no one's going to be arrested for that, right? So this goes much bigger, and you need patsies for everything, right? And so I think some of these Somalis are patsies, and they're complicit in this, and they don't even realize it. And I think all the way up the leadership in Minnesota as well. He's not very smart, so I think it's definitely bigger than just that. Okay. Just to wrap up, this is how, where the conversation has gone on X. So folks are done. Everyone is talking about opting out of paying taxes. And I think that's a noble thing to want. I don't know how practical and feasible that is. You will be fined. Just talking about from experience, you'll be fined if you don't pay your taxes, and you can go to jail if you don't pay your taxes as well and you don't file them. So I don't know that this is going to be this is the right option. So a lot of people want folks to go to jail. People are calling for a tax holiday from the IRS that's well earned. Some people are just talking like this about opting out of paying taxes altogether. I don't know how feasible any of this is. So where do we go from here? Like what do we do now that all this information is out here? Like what do we do with all this, right? I think the solution isn't going to be protesting the system as it exists. I think it's going to be no longer participating in the system, letting itself die out slowly, right? So if you stop being a participant of it and you stop giving it the revenue it needs to continue feeding itself, if you stop, participating in a lot of the political conversation, especially just being like, okay, I'm a racist, so what? Just acknowledging it, moving on, like stop giving them ammunition, morally speaking, to come at you with, just holding facts, the truth to facts and sticking with the facts. I think that's the way to go. I think we're going to see the emergence of a parallel system that's going to come out. And as more and more people wake up and see what's happening, they're going to opt out of the existing system. They're going to opt into the new system, and this old system is going to eventually die out. So yeah, you can go the revolution route, right? You can shed blood. That is certainly an option. But I think another option is opting out. So what does opting out look like? There's a lot of ways to opt out. Opting out of the medical system, right? Stop participating. Stop giving doctors, offices, and businesses that are complicit in a lot of this your money. Look for home or health shares as an alternative. There's new types of medical services that are coming online where you're able to take care of your own data and your own needs. I think I've seen direct like primary care offerings are now being offered where you just pay a subscription and you can go to a primary care physician. And then of course, like paying out of pocket, like I don't think people realize once you say you have insurance or whether you're going to the pharmacy or the doctor, immediately a different set of pricing is given to you. Just don't even say you have pricing or that you have insurance. Just go ask for the pricing, shop around, and keep a list of who is the best service provider. You do this with your car if you need to maintain your car. You do this with home maintenance. Like, why should your health be any different? So I think those who can are going to start opting out of the healthcare system, opting out of the education system. That is clearly broken. So again, those who can and those who want to homeschool your kids. Band together with other families, create a pod, whatever you need to do. Homeschool your kids, get them out of the system, get them to learn a trade, learn a real skill. So then when they become adults, they're not just immediately funneled into the college system. If they want to go to college and you have the resources to pay for it, fine, that's a choice. But give them options. Don't just make that the only default just because you have abdicate the responsibility of educating your children and you've put them into the state-sponsored school system, you need to get them out. For those again who can, I would strongly encourage folks to consider this, but take a lesson from this. A lot of our tax laws are written to benefit businesses. There are a lot of ways you can create a business. Like I make money doing this, so this is a business. There's a lot of loopholes and benefits and things you can take advantage of if you run a business, especially if you run a business out of your home. So I strongly would suggest that women in particular, I think women should stay at home, raise the kids, but also start businesses within their homes to generate revenue outside of the W-2 business system that exists now, so that you create some diversity of risk within your household. You're obviously bringing in extra revenue as well, but then you can also tap into a lot of those extra tax write-offs and ways to kind of shelter some of your money. Definitely look into that. I'm not a financial expert, so definitely consult a financial expert who can help you navigate that. But I think women would be better off raising their own kids, taking care of them, and generating money on the side. I think that's the way to go. And then, I think the game for a lot of people, focus on trying to earn more money because they want to keep up with the Joneses. We've all been programmed to earn as much money as possible. I think we need to reverse it. I think you need to earn as little money on paper as possible so less money goes to Uncle Sam. And again, there's ways to do that. A business will help you structure your assets or structure your income in such a way where most of it is within the business. And if you have expenses that you can write off within the business, that's one way you can help lower your costs. But being strategic about it, looking for ways to combine personal and business, get those write-offs and and do what you can. An example of this, people do this all the time, so I'm not like advocating you to commit fraud or anything, obviously, but people do this all the time, is they will tack on a vacation onto a business trip, right? So you get part of, if not all of, a vacation paid for if it's part of a business trip, right? Lots of people do that all the time. So you need to start thinking like that. I think that is going to help. And forming community, obviously, forming community with like-minded people, looking for people who agree with you, who understand what's happening and recognize that the system is broken, it's not going to work. How can we work together to solve it? So rebuilding community, that has been the basis of America, and what makes America so great is we had strong families, and those families lived together in neighborhoods and built strong communities. And we need to get back to that. And so I think, opting out of the system, stop participating in it, stop, using credit cards. The banking system is complicit in a lot of this. Stop using credit cards, start paying with cash, stop shopping at big vendors, like Walmart. Start shopping locally, make an initiative, make an effort to source as much locally as possible, buy things secondhand, barter trade. We're at a point where this system is no longer sustainable. So we individually need to take action on our own to stop participating in it. And as more and more people opt out of the existing system and opt into the new system that is going to be created, the old system will suffocate and die out. It's going to be deprived of resources. As healthy people leave the medical system and you're only left with sick people, it's not going to work. I'm not talking about cancer patients. I'm talking about morbidly obese people who are sick because they have unhealthy lifestyles, and many of whom are also beneficiaries of programs like SNAP and Medicaid. Okay, that's what I'm talking about with that. You gotta let the system suffocate itself out. Women and feminist girl bosses who are on these jobs, who are going to be clamoring to get unemployment benefits as they continue to lose jobs. You need to let them suffer. I know that's harsh, but we got to hold people accountable. If they're not willing to read the room and see what's happening, that's on them. It's not on you, the taxpayer, the hardworking taxpayer, to continue subsidizing these people. So I think opting out and minimizing your income on paper, not your income in general, just on paper, using the system, using the rules of the game, learning how to play the game, using it to your advantage in much the same way that the Somali population has done, and making it possible for you to live a life outside of the system. I think that is going to go a long way. start voting in local elections. A lot of people don't participate locally. They just focus on the federal. It's clear when you ignore the local and the state, things like this happen. Fraud is able to happen. So I think this should be a wake-up call that you need to participate in local politics and state politics, not just federal. So yeah, something new is going to have to come out of this. Absolutely. I hope it's not violently done, but I'm aware that could be a possibility. But I think this is an inflection point moving forward. I think a lot of things are going to have to change. So I've blabbered on for long enough. That's what I have for you today. If you appreciate this overview of what's going on with the Somali community in Minnesota right now, I would love it if you would like, subscribe, share with anyone you know. As always, I appreciate you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video.